Good morning, scholars. Today is Monday, April 6th. Really excited to continue on with our unit on multiplying and soon dividing decimals. I'm going to start with some huge shout outs. So first, shout outs to scholars who were in the 100% club for their quiz on Friday. Take a look at that SCU list, way to really represent. Shout out from UNC to Kamaya and Dillery for 100% on their quiz. In SCU, shout out to Adam, Danya, Anira, Nevea, Abimael, Amelia, Alejandro, Corday, and Aiden. Really tremendous work there. And in Duke, shout out to Diana. SCU, so incredibly proud of you. Continue to bring that as we go into today's assignment all throughout the week, and cannot wait for our quiz this coming Friday to see which class is representing the most. Also want to give some shout outs. This is the list of scholars who have turned in every single piece of work from their first week of online learning. So from UNC, huge shout out to Andrew, Annalie, Ajane, Dillery, Emmanuel, Jaden, Kamaya, Latasia, Lyric, Miguel Angel, and Tenmeet. In SCU, biggest list again of the whole school. Abimael, Adam, Anira, Aiden, Amelia, Araceli, Corday, Danya, Giovanna, Jakira, Michelle, Nevea, and Zach. Nice work, SCU. And in Duke, got some shout outs for Duke scholars as well. To DMA, to Diana, Edwin, Gilbert, Julian, and Monica. Duke, your list is not quite as long as UNC's and SCU's. So make sure if you are missing any of those assignments, you're getting them turned in. Make sure that this week you are completing all of your work and getting it turned in on time. So next week we can have an even longer list from each class. I challenge everyone to bring it on this week. See if you can beat SCU, because they are currently winning both with the 100% as well as with all their work turned in. As a reminder, after you complete an assignment, not only do you submit it in Google Forms, you also then must click on the assignment and you must click this button, mark as done. So Mrs. Dunn and I know it's done and know it's ready to be graded. One last thing I want to go through before we dive into today's math. I want to make sure everybody knows how to check their grades. You keep seeing shout outs for all these great 100%. If you're not on the list for 100% and you're wondering, well, how did I do? What you will do to check your grades is you'll just log in to your normal Google Classroom and click on 5th grade math. As a reminder, this is where every morning you see the list of scholars who are coming to reteach. Thank you for checking that before 10:45 each morning and then being on time with your paper and pencil ready if you are one of those scholars. When you are ready to check your grade, you would click on classwork just like you would to see the day's assignment. You would then click on this button all the way at the top that says view your work. So far, we have had 5 assignments. So you can see here, this scholar has completed 3 of them, but is missing this one assignment. When you go into your page and click on that button, you will see if you are missing any assignments. It's not too late. This scholar can still open up this assignment, click view details, still complete the assignment by, of course, first watching the video and then completing the independent practice and then clicking mark as done when he is done. This is also a great place to see all of the work, all the grades that you've gotten so far. The scholar can see, wow, on March 31st, got 100%, 10 out of 10 on that assignment. Whoops, on April 2nd, only got a 4 out of 10 and it was done late. Okay, this week I'm gonna set a goal of getting all my assignments in on time. That means they're turned in at 10 p.m. that night. And I'm gonna make sure I'm watching the video really carefully, doing the math along with it, then coming to office hours if I have any questions so I can bring my grade up just a little bit. All right, if you have any questions about checking your grade or any questions about a particular grade on an assignment, please feel free to send me a message or give me a call, and I'd be happy to help you out with that. As one final reminder, you do not need to click the resubmit button. So let's take a look at this one assignment that this scholar turned in. There's always a choice to resubmit it. You don't need to resubmit it. You're not redoing the quiz. It doesn't even let you, so you do not need to resubmit it. Once you get a message that it has been graded and you see your grade in there, you're good to go. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. All right, I was so incredibly impressed with this long list of scholars who have done every single assignment, turn them in. I urge you to go on today, check your grades, see how well you're doing. If you are not on this list, I urge you even more to go in and take a look at your grades today, see which assignments are missing so you can get those completed and get a grade for them. If you have any questions, please let me know. All right, with that, we're gonna dive right into our math for today. All right, first problem we have, we're actually gonna take a look at a little story about Kamaya. So Kamaya, you saw her on the list for 100%. You saw her on the list for having everything completed. She's been crushing her online math. She's been doing such a great job using estimation to determine where to put the decimal. But one of her friends says they think that there's actually a pattern that makes it even easier to figure out exactly where that decimal point goes. So we're gonna look at 4 different multiplication problems right now. I wanna see if you can figure out what do you think this pattern is? What could be this pattern for where do you put the decimal? I'm gonna give you 2 minutes to just take a look, and then on your scrap paper, I want you to write, what do you think this pattern or this rule is? So as always, you should have your scrap paper set up. You can just give yourself some room right on there to write, what is this pattern or what is this rule? And then just write it out in words. In 2 minutes, we'll check in. What do you think is the pattern or rule that Kamaya's friend is suggesting when she is multiplying a decimal by a decimal? Go ahead and get to work. All right, about 30 more seconds. Again, you're writing out in words, what is this pattern? What do you notice in each one of these multiplication problems that Kamaya's friend noticed about where to put that decimal point? All right. Pause where you are with your writing. Go ahead and put those pencils down. I want you to just look right up here at your screen. Let's take a look, and I'd love to hear what some of you had. Let's look at our very first problem when we're multiplying 12 and 72 hundredths times 3 and 51 hundredths. what did you notice about the amount of decimal place values in the factors? And then what did you notice about the amount of decimal place values in the product? Did anyone notice any pattern? I saw some of you noticing that if we were to count the amount of decimal place values in our factors, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So a total of 4 place values in our decimals, four decimal place values in our factors. And then when we look at our product, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 decimals, 4 decimal place values in our product. Pretty cool, those of you who recognize that pattern. So 4 and 4. Let's take a look at our next example. Here we were multiplying 5 and 123 thousandths times 2 and 100 thousandths. Let's take a look at what we notice. Thinking about the pattern we saw here in number 1, does anyone recognize a similar pattern here in number 2? Very good. If we take a look at the number of decimal place values in our factors, now we need to count them for the 2 factors combined. Count them with me. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which means we're going to have how many decimal place values in our product? You're exactly right. We're going to have 6. Let's check and make sure we do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nice work. When we had 6 decimal place values in our factors, we ended up with a product that also had 6 decimal place values. I'm just going to start jotting this down. I just want to make sure I'm noticing this pattern in a chart. So I'm going to say the number of decimal place values in the factors and in the product. I know the factors are the 2 numbers I'm multiplying. My product is, of course, my answer. I'm making sure I put the S at the end of that word factors because I'm not just talking about one of the numbers. I'm talking about both numbers I multiply. And if I need to make myself a note, both numbers I multiply. I would love for you to also make this chart on your scrap paper. Let's just go back and take a look at what we found so far. In our first problem, we had 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal place values in our factors and 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal place values in our product. 4 decimal place values in our factors and 4 in our product. In our second example, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decimal place values in our factors and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decimal place values in our product. I know some of us are really starting to recognize a pattern. This is a pretty easy pattern to pick up on. Let's take a look at our next example. All right, I want to look at how many decimal place values. That's just the number of digits after the decimal point. How many decimal place values? I'm noticing 1, 2 in my factor. And then how many in my product? We had 2 in our factors. And then I bet we can figure out, even without having to count, what's the pattern? How many would there be in our product? You all know it. Go ahead and write it down. 2 in our factors means, of course, 2 in our product. All right, very last example. I want you to try this one in your chart on your own. How many decimal place values in the factors? Remember, I need to look at both factors when I multiply 7 and 2/10 times 5/10. Of course, we had a total of 2 decimal place values. And so even without counting, everyone can fill in how many decimal place values do we need to have in our product. Go ahead. Okay, I see everybody writing down 2 to match that pattern. Let's just double check. 1, 2. Pretty cool pattern. So we started off this morning by trying to articulate or trying to explain in writing, what is this pattern? The number of decimal place values in our 2 products is going to be the same as the number of decimal place values in our product. When we say decimal place values, we're just talking about the number of digits after the decimal point. Let's go ahead and write this down as kind of a rule or a pattern or a conjecture that we've noticed. This is one of my favorite patterns to pick up on because it's pretty easy to see. 4 and 4. 6 and 6. 2 and 2. 2 and 2. They're exactly the same. In fact, even without looking at a problem, I bet that if I told you that I multiplied 2 numbers or 2 factors together and they had a total of 3 decimal place values, I bet every single one of you can tell me how many decimal place values would be in that product. Everyone go ahead and say it. You're exactly right. It would be 3. This is a pretty cool pattern. All right, so let's write this down in words. You may have written something a little bit different. That's totally fine. Take a look at the conjecture I'm going to write down, and feel free to add anything you would like to yours. So what we noticed, based on this pattern today, we noticed that when multiplying 2 decimals, the number of decimal place values in the factors, remembering that we need to count up all of those decimal place values in both of our factors, or all of our factors if we have even more than 2 numbers that we're multiplying, it's the same as the number of decimal place values in the product. Let's go ahead and write that down. I'm going to write it on my paper in my words. Feel free to add in anything from mine. Feel free to kind of check what you have. Let's say, when multiplying decimals, the number of decimal place values, and again, when I say decimal place values, I'm just talking about the digits after the decimal point. So the number of decimal place values in the factors, I'm making extra sure I have that S at the end of the word factors, because I know if I'm multiplying, I need to have at least 2 numbers. I could have 3, I could have 4, I could have lots of factors, but I need to have more than 1, and I need to make sure I count all of that. So the number of decimal place values in the factors will be the same as the number of decimal place values in the product. Of course, the product is just the answer when we multiply. We're all really good with that vocabulary. All right, let's just check this. Yours does not need to sound like mine exactly, but check to make sure that you have written in words what this new rule is. When multiplying decimals, the number of decimal place values in the factors will be the same as the number of decimal place values in the product. Pretty cool rule. Let's try just one example. So for example, if I had, let's just say I was going to multiply 6 and 83/100ths times 14 and 27/100ths. If I want to know how many decimal place values need to go into my product, I would just count. Let's count all of our decimal place values in my product. In my factors. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the factors have a total of 4 decimal place values. Remember, I did not just count one of them. I had to count all those decimal place values, everything after the decimal point. And I got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, which means my product needs to have how many decimal place values? Go ahead and write it. I know everybody knows it. And you're exactly right. We would need to have 4. And so I'm not even going to worry about multiplying this right now for our example because we are just so focused on our where the decimal point goes. But if I were to tell you that after multiplying these two, I got an answer of 974,641. These are all the digits I get when I multiply. Where would I put the decimal point? Based on this rule, let's see if we can figure it out. We had 4 decimal place values in our factors, which means we need 4 decimal place values in our product. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and put my decimal point right here. Let's just double check that this matches our pattern. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal place values in our factor, and 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal place values in our product. Nice work. They are exactly the same. All right, so let's test this conjecture out. All right, I need some new scrap paper. I definitely filled mine up. If you need to grab some new paper, flip yours over, do whatever you need to do so you have some room to work. Let's take a look at a problem about our friend Susan. So Susan, she doesn't go to VCP. She was trying to watch this video and she was just getting a little bit confused. She's not as good at math as all of you guys are. And so she's trying to apply this rule that we just created where, okay, the number of decimal place values in the factors is going to be the same as the number of decimal place values in the product. So she set up her problem 2 and 75/100ths times 3 and 20/100ths. She multiplied, all of her multiplication is correct. But she got to this answer of 880. And then her teacher said, I'm so sorry, Susan, great multiplication, but unfortunately your decimal point is in the wrong place. Can you go back and try it again? What I want you guys to do on your blank paper, you don't need to multiply. Susan has already multiplied for you and she did get her multiplication correct. But I do want you to write out what was her mistake. Write it out in words. See if you can figure out where did she go wrong? What did she do compared to what she should have done? So just find some room on your paper. You should have probably a new fresh sheet of blank paper, and you can just set it up by saying Susan's mistake was, and explain what did she do compared to what she should have done. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to just explain what was her mistake. Go ahead. All right, about 10 more seconds. All right, finish up with your writing. What was her mistake? All right, I see a lot of you spotted it. And you're exactly right. It does have something to do with the number of decimal place values she has in her factors and then the number of decimal place values she has in her product. And what I see everybody noticed was that in her factors, she actually has 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal place values, or 4 digits after the decimal point. But in her product, she only has 1, 2. When I wrote that out, I wrote something that looks a little bit like this. Susan's mistake was that she has 4 decimal place values in her factors. I could count them: the 7, the 5, the 2, the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But sadly, she only has 2 decimal place values in her product. We know that those actually need to be the same. She actually needs 4 decimal place values in her product. Silly Susan. Clearly not a VCP scholar. I know we won't be making that mistake. So now that we see what her mistake is, I would like you to actually find what her product should have been. You don't need to remultiply. She actually multiplied all of her digits correctly. Susan's very good at her multiplication facts. But you do need to move her decimal point. We just said when talking about what was wrong, where her decimal point should go. And so what I would like you to do now is write your answer. What should her answer be? You do not need to recopy the multiplication problem. Just go ahead and write the product. All right, let's see what you got. She had 880 with only 2 decimal place values. No good. We know that she actually needs 4 decimal place values. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so her decimal point should actually go after the 8. If you also got your decimal point right after the 8 and you got to an answer of 8 8/10, nice work. Air high five, get ready. All right. Now let's just double check this using estimation. Remember that Susan was multiplying 2 75/100 times 3 20/100. We know 2 75/100 can round to 3. 3 20/100 can also round to 3. I did that by just dropping my decimal points. And 3 times 3 is 9. 9 and 8 8/10 are really, really close. This was a great estimate. However, 9 and 880 are not very close. This was not a great answer. So estimating can always help us check, but now that we know this rule, pretty cool. It's a little bit faster. We know exactly how to count where our decimal point needs to go. All right, another one I want you to try. We have another friend, not a VCP scholar, who's having some trouble as well. This is our friend, Joe. Joe solved this problem, but Joe made a mistake. I want you to figure out what was his mistake with his decimal point, and then what should the correct answer actually be. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. It's great practice to actually write out in words what is his mistake. Hint, you will have a question on your independent practice today that asks you to explain in writing what the mistake is. Plus, it just really shows that you understand it. So find some room on your paper for Joe's mistake. I want you to write what was his mistake. You can think of it as what did he do versus what was he supposed to do. And then I want you to say what his answer should have been. I will let you know that Joe's multiplication is correct. He does not have any mistakes with his numbers. He's very good at his facts, just like our friend Susan. But unfortunately, he has not had this great lesson on how to place his decimal point, so he's just a little bit tricked. Go ahead and take 2 minutes. All right. Take 5 more seconds to finish up your thoughts. Make sure you've explained what did Joe do versus what should he have done. That was his mistake. And then you have his correct answer as well. All right, let's check in and see what we got. All right, so our friend Joe. Joe's mistake was that he had 6 decimal place values in his factors, but only 3 decimal place values in his product. We know that he needs to have 6 decimal place values in his product. I just explained this by saying what he did versus what he should have done. If we look at his work, he needs to have, or in his factors, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 digits in his decimal place value for his factors, but he only has 1, 2, 3. I'm wondering if Joe was a little bit tricked and he thought, oh, because there's only 1, 2, 3 place value digits in, or decimal place value digits in each of my factors, maybe that's why he put 3 in his products. But we know that's not how we do it. We know that we need to count all of the decimal place values, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so when figuring out his correct answer, this is not correct. We need to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 decimal place values in our product. And so you should have an answer of 17 and 47 hundredths. If you got this, take out your pencil, take out a marker if you have one, and let's give ourselves a lovely smiley face for great work. And then today's pajama day. And so if you want, let's give him a pajama hat. There's our happy face and his pajama hat ready to go. Nice work. All right. I am going to give you another problem to try. Before I give you another problem to try, there's one thing I want to make sure you know. I do have something I want to share with you about our friend Watson. So, Watson, you guys have now heard that Watson loves ice cream cake. We had some ice cream cake over the weekend. Another thing that Watson loves to do is when he's watching TV, he loves the show Peppa Pig. I don't know what it is. I think he just really enjoys the British accents of all the characters there, but he just finds their adventures fascinating. He thinks it's really, really funny. In fact, sometimes he even tries to talk in a British accent, just like the characters in Peppa Pig. So that is his favorite TV show. He loves Peppa Pig. If you're worried you might forget that, you might want to write it down. You may need to use this later. And if you're worried that you might forget how to spell Peppa Pig, it's written right here for you. It's written right here for you. You might want to write that down also to make sure you know exactly how to spell Peppa Pig. But don't forget, Watson, when he sits down to watch TV, which isn't too much, I don't let him watch too much TV, but he does love to watch a good episode or two of Peppa Pig. He has been really wanting this Peppa Pig lunchbox. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to get it for him or not. That's what he really wants, but he does really, really love Peppa Pig. Make sure you write that down. Don't forget, Watson loves Peppa Pig. All right. Let's go back. I think we're ready to try one more before you try some totally on your own. I'm out of room on my blank paper. I need to find another sheet, so I'm ready for my next problem. All right, this one is up to you to multiply. I know some of you got some extra help this morning from Mrs. Dunn with that standard algorithm. So in this one, you need to do two things. You need to multiply yourself, and then you need to figure out where that decimal point goes. I want to really challenge you to use that rule, that pattern, that conjecture we came up with today that you've been acing this morning, thinking about where do I put my decimal point? How can I figure out how many decimal place values are in my factors, and how can that help me figure out how many decimal place values in my product? Let's also make sure we're doing really careful multiplication. Some of you who usually get like hundreds and 90s have gotten a few scores that are just a little bit lower just due to some silly mistakes. So take a second, go ahead and set it up on your paper. Now, some of us may be at a point where we can just multiply and just kind of ignore the decimal point and it doesn't bother us. And we know when we're done where to put it. Or if this confuses you, you can always temporarily take it out. And if you like to rewrite your problem as 545 times 275, you can. And then, of course, put the decimal back in, of course, using how many decimal place values we have. It's up to you. If you don't need this step, you don't need to use it. Do go ahead and solve. I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I'm going to give you 2.5 minutes. Go ahead and get right to work, and then we'll check in and see your answer. under 1 minute left to go. You should be wrapping up with that multiplication, checking your addition, and then starting to think about our rule and where do we place our decimal point. All right, 5 more seconds. All right. Nice work. Let's check in and see what we got. All right, so for our multiplication, when we multiplied 545 times 275, we should have gotten to a product of 149,875. I was really careful and remembered to add 1 0 place value holder when I was multiplying by 70, and then add 2 0 place value holders when I was multiplying by 200. If these are the digits you got when you were multiplying, you are absolutely correct, but I still need to figure out where my decimal goes. I went back to my factors and I noticed that I had 1, 2, 3, 4 place value digits in my factors, which of course means I need to have, you're exactly right, 4 place value digits, decimal place value digits in my product. And so after counting 1, 2, 3, 4, I knew my decimal point would go right here. To double check, I can do a quick estimate and take my 5 and 45 hundredths and just turn that into 5, and 2 and 75 hundredths, and either drop the decimal and turn that into 2 or round it up to the nearest whole number of 3, and get to an estimate of 15. 15 is very, very, very close to 14 and 9,875 ten-thousandths. However, it is not very close if I had left my answer as 149,875. Really nice work. If you got this one correct, we are going to draw a picture of Peppa Pig in honor of Watson's favorite show. Now, I'm not very good at drawing pigs. It's okay if you're not very good at drawing pigs either. But let's just take a quick look at Peppa Pig. There he is, and I'm going to try to draw him on my paper for doing such a great job. We'll start with his snout. Add his ears, his eyes. Okay. Mine looks kind of silly. Let's see. This is my picture of Peppa Pig. I know, I'm not very good at drawing pigs. Can't wait to see your picture as well. And then just to really remind myself of what Watson's favorite TV show is and how to spell it, I just labeled my picture as well. Can't wait to see your pictures too. All right, scholars. Today we worked on multiplying decimals, and instead of having to estimate every time to figure out where our decimal point goes, we focused really hard on first identifying a pattern and then using that rule to place the decimal point. We were able to figure out by looking at some different examples that the number of decimal place values in the factors when we count up all of them combined is going to be the exact same as the number of decimal place values in our product. And so that was able to help us multiply using the standard algorithm and then find the right place for our decimal point. I cannot wait to see you try this on your own today. Today you will be clicking on April 6th's independent practice. It is due at 10 p.m. tonight. As you're working, if you have any questions at all, make sure you're coming to office hours. And again, a reminder to make sure to go in and check your grades by clicking on classwork, view your work, and seeing if there's anything that you're missing. If you're missing an assignment, make sure you're getting that completed so it's not a 0 in your gradebook. Cannot wait to see some great scores today. Really nice work. If you have any questions, you know where to find me. Happy solving.